in. So welcome to another Franchise Company First Friday group session. I'm Nick Bramley. My co-host is Julie, who runs the franchise company. We've got a double effort today. So we're talking about recruiting and then developing your team. So whether that's your franchise team or your central franchise support team, we'll hopefully share some ideas and thoughts and impacts with you, so you can have a look and understand what we're all about and what might be interesting to you going forward. So the first speaker we've got is Simon from FranRec. Simon, without saying too much, Simon, you've been around a long time in a good way, I suspect, in terms of understanding the franchise sector, particularly the recruitment of key personnel into that. And without further ado, Simon, if you want to take the screen share and put your slides together, we'd love to hear about building your franchise management team. So over to you, Simon.
Right, let's see if we can get this to work. Thanks very much, Nick. Everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, yeah, that's me, Simon Wise. I founded a business called FranRec back in 2013, really to address the issues that franchisors were facing with recruiting good talent into their networks. And so we set up a dedicated recruitment business called FranRec, which really assists franchisors recruiting head office staff. You know, key roles within business format franchising. We have been involved in the past with recruiting, particularly for multi-unit franchisees where they're requiring management team as well and staff. But that's what we do. Okay, I'm a massive believer and passionate about boots on the ground in franchising. You know, let's look at the franchise model: brand, system, support, and agreement. That is the business format franchising model. And the one area for me that highlights more than anything else is the support element. It's the reason people go into franchising. Look, it's the reason I went into franchising. I started my life at the British Franchise Association as Deputy Director General, and then I left and I bought a driver which I ran for 8 years. But it was the support element that really stood out for me. You know, everything else potentially arguably you can get on your own, but you know, come hell or high water, any situation you're faced with as a small business, to have that support element is a very, very powerful tool and a very, very powerful draw. And this was really brought home to me, how important the support function is. My first day opening my office, my driver hire recruitment office, these two guys turned up at my office door. And I didn't know who they were. They let themselves in, and they sat down at their desks and they started to make phone calls. They started to call my clients. They started to do some marketing for me, and they started to book appointments for me as well. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I don't even know these guys, but they've come into my business and they're helping me from day one. And that was the field support that we had, which was excellent. Now, I'm passionate about franchising support, and I think it's important to say, I think there's a bit of a myth that goes around. I call it the F myth. That's not an expletive, the F. It's basically, look, why do we get into franchising? Somebody comes and knocks on our door and says, hey, look, would you like to grow your business using somebody else's money? Oh, that sounds interesting. And also, did you know that if you run a franchise, you don't have to employ anybody? You can run a lean head office, employ nobody at all, and it's the franchisees that employ all the staff. And for me, that's the biggest myth and the biggest anomaly in franchising today. And I put that little quote on there that I've used throughout all my life, but sometimes it does describe what people think that franchising is all about. You eat like a bird, but shit like an elephant. Apologies for the bad language, but that's a million miles away from good franchising. And to be successful, you need to have that that infrastructure of support in place, because good support is auto-catalytic. You know, once the euphoria of selling the franchise has worn off and the franchise fee gets absorbed in all the aspects of taking that person on board, you know, you've got people that you're going to be having at least a 5-year business relationship with. And these individuals are going to need to be supported, but equally they need to be driven as well. And good franchise support for me is auto-catalytic. It's growth for the franchisee. So their unit economics are excellent. they're happy franchisees, and they provide good validation. What does good validation means? Well, it means that you're going to recruit more franchisees as well. Your franchise recruitment process becomes a lot easier because you've got that excellent validation process. And if you can grow your network through franchisee recruitment, your enterprise value is going to grow as well. So really, that's how I see franchising support, and that's why I position it as so important. I think the profile of franchisee support has certainly changed over the years. Certainly since I first joined the franchise community 20 years ago. What did franchise support mean? Well, it was some guy that went around with a clipboard and a pencil and made sure that you had the right bog roll, your brand looks right, and everything else, and you were conforming. Well, modern day franchise support, boots on the ground, franchisee support now is all about, driving franchisee performance. And Nick's going to be talking a lot more about this, I know, but it's certainly evolving. And the brands that are winning are the ones that are recruiting and investing in their boots on the ground, the ones that are recruiting and investing in their franchisee support. These are, the franchisee support profile now is about a business performance manager, somebody who goes in, almost works like a non-executive director to the franchisee, but is continually driving and supporting them. Yes, making sure they're doing things properly, but really helping them drive their business. And if they drive their business, then obviously the franchisor is going to benefit from their increased management service fee as well. And just to put some profiles, I mean, I work with networks that have over 100 plus franchisees, and their ratio of support staff to franchisees is about 1 in 20. They've got regional managers that have a manageable number of franchisees that they look after. I also work with some very new franchisors as well, who really want to get their boots on the ground as soon as possible. So even when they're working with consultants, for example, they have somebody on the inside who's building the franchise from the inside, working hand in hand with their consultants. And we've seen that work really well, haven't we, Julie, from some of the projects we've been working on together?
Yeah, we have indeed.
Excellent. So when do you bring in the talent? Well, for me, as soon as possible. Obviously, you've got, you need to be able to afford it. But equally, just remember what the franchisees are buying into. They're committed to business format franchising, and the support element is a vital ingredient. It's part of their expectation. It's what's going to make them successful, and what's going to help them, be happy franchisees, have really good, strong franchisee economics, and provide excellent validation for your franchise, for anybody new coming into it. Okay, this is the one and only plug I'm giving for my own business in this presentation. But when we talk about how can you find the right talent, then one option, of course, is to use dedicated franchise staff recruiter. One that's accredited by the BFA, one that will help you construct your job spec, one will give you realistic input on salary expectations, and ultimately, importantly, if you're looking for franchise talent, one that will give you access to the franchise talent pool. You need I guess if you are going to outsource it, you need somebody that understands franchising, so they understand franchising know-how, but they've got the recruitment skills. Outsourcing will save you time, it's confidential, and it's discreet. There are other ways you can do this as well, but like anything, before you go into the marketplace to look to recruit your franchise support team, I would encourage you to think very carefully and spend a bit of time on building the job spec. When I speak to people and ask them about what their reason is for leaving and moving, it's, well, Simon, I came into this job a year ago, but I'm not doing anything that I was hired to do. The job spec that they bought into, that they committed to, is completely different to the reality of being in this business. So make sure it's accurate. Make sure the job spec reflects the attributes, the expectations, and also make sure it gives them an indication of your culture and values. So important now, because to keep people, to recruit good people and to keep them in the business, you've got to have a really strong alignment to your culture and values as well. And this needs to be expressed at a very early stage as well. The job spec has got to be, tell them what experience you're looking for, and also what they're going to be measured on. Make sure that they understand what they're responsible for, but equally what they're going to be measured on. Make sure your salary is realistic. in line with market conditions and candidate expectations. Look, the market has gone nuts in the last 2 years, I will tell you. The average base salary for a franchise support, a franchise BDM field base has gone up by about 25% in the last 2 years. It really is a candidate-driven marketplace. But be realistic as well. You know, I want to recruit an experienced franchise recruiter, somebody who's got 5 years experience of managing the end-to-end franchise recruitment process. We'll pay you a base salary of 20 grand a year and your OTE is 150K. That isn't going to work, okay? People that, if you want to buy in that level of talent, people that can manage the end-to-end franchise recruitment process, you're going to have to pay for that skill to come into the business. So be realistic. And if you've got an established organization, you know, look at your A players in terms of who they are, what their backgrounds are, what you know, their profile, their attributes, their avatar, and build your job spec around encouraging and attracting your A players in the business as opposed to your C players. I mean, that's fairly basic stuff. And what that comes down to, as I said, is doing the preparation, the groundwork, and making sure your job spec is realistic, is accurate, and represents everything about you and what you're looking to do and why you're looking to hire this particular role. So how do you attract the talent? Let's get to the meat and potatoes, I guess. Well, you know, that person could be close to home. You know, it could be somebody that it could be a referral. It could be somebody that's working close to the business already, that likes what you do, has got a really strong alignment to your culture and values, and that individual could be somebody that you can look to take on board. It could be somebody within your industry network, for example, somebody that understands your business and is within one of your networks that you can reach out to, somebody that follows you closely, somebody who's really keen on what you're doing. Is a good way of attracting talent as well. Job boards, you know, there are a lot of job boards out there. Indeed, CV Library, LinkedIn. I don't personally use any of them apart from LinkedIn, if I'm being completely honest with you. Indeed is great, and it's also a good way of seeing how many of your employees are on there, by the way, how many have updated their CVs in the last 6 months. But you know, Indeed, you'll get a sheer volume of CVs that come in, and if you put franchising in there in terms of the search term, you'll get people that have run petrol forecourts, you'll get franchises. You know, business format franchising is what you're looking for. It's very, very targeted and very precise, but they are there. There are some dedicated groups as well on LinkedIn. The Jobs in Franchising group has got over 700 members already, but equally, any vacancies, if you want to attract the talent, make sure you're visible, post them on your website for sure, so people can read about the role within the environment of your business, so they can learn about your brand story and see the role within the context of your business as well. Headhunting is massively popular, and a very good way of using of attracting talent. We do a lot of it through LinkedIn. Ed has talked previously about the search parameters. Brilliant, really good. I mean, you can put in some Boolean string and you can specify location, skills, and you will get a short list of people that match your requirement, and you can use the messaging facility to reach out to them. You know, if you've got the job vacancy posted on your website, you can message them with a link to the vacancy so they can see why you're contacting them. So a lot of things you can certainly do yourself, for sure, to attract the right talent. You know, franchising is a village for sure. It's a close-knit village, and if you're looking for franchise talent, people with the experience that you need, if you want to bring in franchising know-how, it's a small village, and you need to connect with that village and really get the role out there. Feel free to ask any questions at any time, by the way.
We're going to do questions at the end, Simon.
Oh, okay,
yeah, that's fine. Okay, no worries.
Brilliant. Okay. Just some tips as well. I mean, at the moment, as I said, the market is a bit nuts. It's candidate driven, so there are certain things you can do to really make sure you're not missing out on a really good opportunity, a good hire. Sounds obvious, but you know, that's my mantra. Keep it simple. Make it easy for people to reply. You know, if somebody clicks on and says, "Can you send me the full job spec?" act quickly, get back to them quickly. It's very much a candidate-driven marketplace. You know, what information do you want from them? Well, when somebody, you know, responds to the call to action, do you want just a CV, or do you want a covering letter as well, which gives the candidate an opportunity for them to really map their skills and experience, or why they're interested in the role, to what you're looking for. Covering letters are really good as well, for sure. One of the things that I think is really important as well is to find out, you know, why people are looking, even at the earliest stage of applying for the role, is why they're looking to leave their current role, and why do you want to work for us? I mean, as I said, really, you want to be attracting people that have got a good connection to your culture and values. You know, why are you looking to work for us? So many people just apply for jobs because they see the numbers and the pound signs and don't really have a strong connection with the business and the culture and the values. And again, I know it can sound really wishy-washy, but that's how you're going to get the right people into your business, and those are the people that are going to stay with you as well. You know, we talk about the covering letter and the initial contact. You know, some CVs are fantastic, but others are not very good at really highlighting the golden nuggets, if you like. So there are other ways in which you can elicit that information. So yeah, speed is of the essence. Don't keep them hanging around. You know, get them, shortlist your candidates you want to see, get them booked in, and give them a schedule. Tell them what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, so they have the confidence and they know that you're interested in them. That's really important. Too many times I see people just left dangling, and you know, without any clue about what's going on, if you're interested in or you're not interested in them. Feedback is massively important. You know, it's one of my bugbears. If somebody actually commits time to respond to an advert or send their CV, and you know, and they're not selected, they don't get to know why. And I think that's not good. You know, that's not courteous, but also it doesn't give a good impression of your brand as well. So always try and give some feedback to the ones that are not successful, and be honest as well. They might not like it, but it's going to help them in their journey of finding a role. You know, we're uncomfortable because you left too many roles in a short period of time. Yeah, tell them why you're uncomfortable with it and give them an opportunity to respond. So feedback all the time. So that's initial response handling. It's about, you know, getting people, making it easy for them to communicate with you and engage with you at an early stage. Other things you need to do to get to know your candidates, and I think Ed's touched upon this as well in the past, is, you know, you've got a CV in front of you for somebody, but have a look at their socials, have a look at their Facebook, their Twitter, have a look at, you know, how they present themselves in the public domain. You know, another thing as well is, you know, is their LinkedIn profile consistent with their CV? How many times, you know, you get a CV in and then you go to LinkedIn and you find out, hang on a minute, there was another job there that's not on the CV. You know, these are all things you can do at the front end to really make sure that these people are the right fit for your business, the right fit for your culture and organization values. A bit more about the interview process. You know, snooze and you lose. You do. You know, don't keep people waiting. You know, make sure. This is something I say to all of my clients as well. You know, you've decided to recruit for somebody. Make sure you space lots of time out in your diary and commit your time to making sure you can do first interviews. You know, so you're not keeping people waiting. It really is really important to get people in quickly and to start to evaluate them. But you know, I would recommend a sort of 3-stage process. Really, I think the first interview really is you put the job spec to one side, and it's you know, do a Zoom call or a telephone call and just get to know them. You know, just get to know them. What makes them tick? You know, look out for the short-term consultancy roles on CVs as well, because they usually mean they haven't stayed in a job long enough and they've moved, and you want to find out why. But use the first interview and the first interaction. We're really getting to know you. What do you like doing? What are your interests, hobbies, whatever it may be? Why are you interested in us? Find out what research they've done. Shortlist from that first interview and go on to a more formalized competency-based interview. We'll talk about competency-based in a minute, but that really is probably the most part of the process. You're mapping their skills and experience to what you're looking for. You know, you shortlist from there, and the third interview will, I would always recommend getting somebody to do a presentation, because you're asking them to demonstrate their presentation skills. You want to see that they're confident in their communication. Are they going to be confident speaking to franchisees? And a really popular title that we work with for a presentation is, tell us what your 30, 60, 90 days are going to look like in the role. And it's funny, but it's very similar to a business plan, but you're looking for somebody who's going to explain, what they're going to be doing, what their priorities are going to be over the first initial periods of the hire. Make your choice and don't linger. Again, it's really important to identify the ones that you want and don't keep them hanging around. And again, please feedback to those that are not successful. If somebody has committed time, effort, and resourcing to coming to see you for a face-to-face meeting, for example, feedback to them. And again, just give them true and honest feedback. I think that's so important, because you want them to benefit from this experience as much as anything else. Competency-based interviews are going to be probably the most important tool, I think, particularly if you're looking for, franchise-specific talent. Because there are certain skills and abilities that you need when supporting franchisees, and the competency-based interview structure really helps you assess the candidate against the key competencies identified in the job spec. What you're looking to do is to elicit the evidence from the candidate they can actually do the role. For example, a franchise development support role, the ability to optimize growth potential for franchisees at all different stages on the life cycle. That's an important facet of this type of role. So you really want to be asking them, tell me about a time when you acted to improve the performance of an underperforming franchisee. These are always open-ended questions that you can really get, and you can elicit the response from and get them to demonstrate how they can really adapt to the role and deliver what's required. Just finally, once you've made your selection, I think this was a screen that we used to just do as a sort of a quick, here we go, this is the final thing, yada yada yada. But it's an interesting one. You think the job's done, but there are certain things that can come back and bite you on the backside. You've made the offer to the person, they've given you all the right noises, and then they get a counter offer from their existing employer. How many employers will, once they know somebody's leaving, will give them that $5,000 a year pay rise that they've been asking for the last 7 or 8 years? So just be aware of that. And again, that's all part and parcel of an interview process. You can minimize the risk of that happening by, asking people why they're interested. Why are you looking to why are you looking to move roles? Why are you looking to join us and leave what you're doing at the moment? References, goes without saying. Induction, don't just bring them in and let them get on with it. You've got to have a structured induction process, training, support, keep your promises that you made at interview in terms of probationary periods, review, and continue to engage and review that new employee within the business, how well they're settling in with the new team, what's their feedback. But keep your promises. You will be, your probationary period is 3 months. At the end of 3 months, we'll sit down, we'll talk to you about the role, see how things are going, and then we can, keep it going. Don't just make the promises to get them on board and then don't deliver. So really, employee engagement is massively important now. The biggest challenge to any business is the recruitment and retention of good staff, and certainly in franchising, the tenure, the average tenure for somebody working in a franchise support role is diminishing, and that impacts your franchisees, because they like the longevity, they like the relationships they build. So employee engagement is so important all the time. You do not want to have to go through the whole process of recruiting and replacing people again, where you could have learned at an early stage about any issues and problems that you were being faced with. That's pretty much it. That's my sort of take on franchise support and the way in which you can recruit staff. It's tough. I say it's very tough at the moment. It's very much a candidate-driven marketplace, and it's a challenge. You need to be creative. You need to make sure you dedicate enough time for the search and selection process, and prioritize that and move swiftly. Don't compromise, but move swiftly and professionally, and keep people informed all the time on where they're at in the process. Julie, any questions? Sorry.
Well, thank you for that, Simon. At this stage, we're going to keep the questions until the end, because
sorry, yeah, you did say that.
I'm going to follow up from what you've done in terms of building the initial franchise team, and I'm going to talk about developing them in terms of going forward. So whether it's kind of franchise support for your management team, or franchise support for your franchisees and indeed their management team, we're going to cover that. I'm going to cover it in 2 particular areas. So before I do that, I'm going to just change the screen details. So bear with me. Okay, well, good to see some of you with your cameras on and cameras off, some of you. The situation that we're going to talk about is developing your franchise teams. So whether that is indeed your franchisees or their teams or your central functions, it's all down to coaching and training. And I've got a question for the room before I go into the sort of presentation mode of this. Is anyone got an idea what the difference between the two is? Who wants to share with me difference between training and coaching? Anyone put the hand up and contribute? I'm looking at Stuart, who's smiling. Stuart, you shouldn't smile when I'm looking for a volunteer. That's a very big mistake. So
no, I was smiling at the lack of volunteers, actually.
There you go. Well, yeah, unfortunately, that puts you front and centre when you smile or make eye contact. So what's your view on the difference between the two?
I would say training is how to teach someone to do a job. Coaching is how to teach someone to do it well. That's what I would go for.
Oh, it was so close. The first bit was good. The second bit went off the rails a bit. We'll come back to that in a second. That's okay. I'm going to go to Ed, because Ed's an experienced fellow, and he knows I don't mind. If I pick on him, he don't mind, I don't think. So, Ed, what's your view, do you reckon, on training and coaching? If I tell you that Stuart was correct on the first one, what's the difference between training and coaching?
So, yeah, for me, training is kind of showing someone or talking through someone how to do something exactly, so this is how you deliver XYZ, or this is how you operate a machine or run some software, whereas coaching, I would say, is more along the lines of goal setting. So it's helping people to know where they should be putting their efforts. How's that, Nick?
Close enough. We'll go with that. So, Bob, you need to be muted if you don't mind on yours, because it gives background noise. I know I'm in a client's office, it's a bit echoey, so I apologise for that. But if we can get Bob to mute, that'd be good. Coaching, as Stuart said, and you alluded to there, Ed, is from a training point of view, the training is about sharing knowledge from someone with the experience and skills to do that, and imparting that knowledge in a way that someone learns and absorbs from that particular delivery style. So it's very much sort of, even though it can be done in a one-to-one way or whatever, it's top down. Someone who's got the experience, sharing that knowledge and wisdom and imparting that into somebody to copy, replicate, and find their way of doing it. And as you said there, at the coaching side is very much around aspiration, goal setting, what someone's capable of, and helping them as a coach to achieve that through being challenging in the right way, through questioning, through helping them to develop their skill and confidence, but you're not doing it for them. You're not even sharing with them the solution. You're getting them to think about the solution, their capability. The story I like to talk about in terms of coaching is Jess Ennis, who obviously won the heptathlon at the 2012 Olympics. And she had 7 disciplines, and she wasn't particularly strong in the field events. So the javelin and the shot put were her weakest kind of disciplines. Now, she was training on a wet Thursday night in November, a long time away from the Olympics in the following sort of June, July, in a cold stadium in Sheffield, and thinking, I hate the javelin, I hate the shot put. And you can't say to Jess Ennis, you need to throw 70 metres, Jess, or you're not going to win the gold medal. You've got to get Jess to work out what, on her best day, with the crowd behind her, sun shining, never felt better, no niggling injuries, at the height of her performance powers, how far does she perceive she can throw to achieve her objective, which would be to win the gold medal? And then it's about her being developed and helping her confidence when she's supposed to be 70 meters and she's getting 60. How do you get her to be confident to continue that development journey instead of giving up? So the coach is the rounded person who's going to help them to achieve their objectives. The trainer is the person who's going to impart their skill and knowledge and wisdom on that basis. So that's the sort of framework for what I want to go through and what I want to share with you. So as we go through this, again, screen issues. Okay, now what I want you to think about is this is not by any means a sales pitch for what the franchise company are all about. It's very much about kind of what kind of training you should be looking to share or engage your teams in, and whether those teams are involved in sort of a head office function, a central function, or the franchisees themselves. There are several key disciplines that are going to help them to be successful. So I've got 10 to share with you. Everyone in the old adage is a salesperson. So everyone should at least have confidence in terms of, if it's not direct sales, is the positioning of the business in terms of how that business operates and what the key selling points are of that business. The next one is the strategy and what the business is trying to achieve and where it's trying to get to, and how do you help to develop a strategy for an organization and share that and impart that with the organization and the team. Business development, which is different to sales in terms of the overall kind of emphasis of how the business grows and how the business implements that strategy. I am having an absolute nightmare with this technology today. I do not know why this is on auto. Bear with me a second. Okay. Every organization needs to learn how to sell, what its unique selling points are. It's linked to their growth plan, their strategy, where the business is going, how the business is going to get there. Business development is the execution of some of that, connected to the marketing, connected to the overall market penetration. At the core of everything that an organization does, that it does well, should be the customer experience. Now, if you build your franchise around the customer experience, and the customer being your target customers, your existing customers, and your aspirational customers, then you will build processes that allow you to ensure that you are maximizing the performance of your customer experience, which links to sales, which links to growth. And business growth is overall, how do we take a startup or a smaller franchise and get it to be scalable, expandable? How do we get to manage that as we continue to go through the overall growth process, which sometimes can take time, sometimes can be, exponential, right time, right place, etc. And what's the challenges of business growth? It's people, it's process, it's systems. So we look at that and say, if you've got a growing franchise with a growing franchise central team, you need to make sure that your business is fit for that growth and your franchise is fit for that purpose. Otherwise, you'll always be putting sticking plasters over and trying to grow on the back of a limited budget or a limited strategy, and it's going to reduce your potential to achieve your maximum franchise penetration and performance. So the other areas that we look at and can be looked at and should be recommended are across these key areas here. So the marketing side of your franchise is your key messages to your key sectors, how you're going to deal with that in terms of social media, traditional marketing routes, looking at how much money you're putting aside for your marketing spend. What are you going to do with the marketing collateral that you create centrally? And what are people paying for that from their marketing franchise fees? What's their expectations on that? And how's that going to work for them? Okay. Digital performance, again, as the name suggests, there is how effective is your technology when it comes to driving your business, the data capture using social media, ensuring that you are using the digital assets that you create and continue to create to the best advantage of your franchise. I'm not going to touch on recruitment because Simon's done a great job on that. But once you get to a certain level of scale, you then start to get structure. And that structure means you're talking about management, you're talking about leadership, you might be talking about supervision. So if you had, say, a cleaning franchise, for example, you might have people who start off in the field as a franchisee, sorry, who are then building a team of people that they have to manage and supervise. So they're not doing the cleaning anymore, but so much as a management or supervisory role. Internally, when you're building a team around your central functions, then management leadership could be your marketing and digital performance team suddenly have 2 or 3 staff in there who's responsible for looking after them and motivating them and ensuring that you've got the skills to do so. And if I had £1 for every time I've seen someone who's really good at a particular job, who then gets promoted to be the person who is managing that particular job. So I'll give you an example. You can have someone who's excellent at sales, then becomes the sales manager, and seeing the disaster that creates, I'd be a rich man. And the reason I'd be a rich man is because the skills required to do a particular task or function might be very different to the skills or tasks required to be a manager or a leader of that function, because it's about people and communication. So don't promote people just because they're good at a job. You need to look at what their gaps are in their capability around management and leadership. And the last thing is building training around a competitive advantage. How do you do that? And there's another area that links to growth, success, longevity, and continuous performance improvement for the franchise. When it comes to coaching, we've got 5 areas that we look at in terms of coaching, and not dissimilar. We look at business coaching around how to run a business, what does a business look like, sales coaching to give people the confidence to go out there and perform. We do confidence coaching, although we're not really life skills coaching organisation, but management coaching is another area. And the last one we look at, again, is personal coaching. Now, personal coaching sometimes, quite simply, is giving people the confidence to try and the confidence to break out of their traditional or more traditional comfort zones. So if you're looking at getting people to high performance levels to grow your franchise, then you need to look at how do we invest in these people to be as successful as possible. So we can train them along up to 10 different disciplines, or we can coach them in areas where they perceive themselves to be lacking or weak or weaker, or in requirements for a future career development path. I always say it's a bit like the snakes and ladders board, if you like. If you're going to go up to the next level, you need to have achieved certain levels of areas of whether it's confidence, management, business awareness, etc. So you put these things in place when you're ready to develop people along your career paths within your franchise. The next thing we talk about is how do we do this in terms of remote coaching and remote training? Well, we do this in a couple of areas. We're a workshop deliverer in classroom. We do interactive webinars that are better than the delivery of this one with my laptop going bananas. Or we can come to your conference and workshops and do keynote presentations and speaking around key subjects that might be relevant and of interest to your organisation. In terms of coaching, we look at coaching in 2 particular areas. We've got what we call a 3-session high impact program that's designed to unblock a particular blockage or challenge. Or we've got a building blocks program, which starts with 6 coaching sessions. And those 6 coaching sessions are designed to develop someone's rounder skills rather than particularly focus on one single aspect of a weakness or an area for development. So if you've got people who need a boost or injection of particular external support, then maybe a high impact coaching program of 3 sessions would just unblock that blockage. If you're looking to continually develop and invest in your team, then a building blocks program would work. Or we can build coaching programs around the individual requirements or the group requirements of head office staff, central function staff, franchisees, or indeed the staff within the franchise model for those who've got, teams themselves. So investing in your team is one way that Simon talked about, having an induction and a continually engaging process. And induction could include some of the training modules we've talked about, but certainly if you're going to continue to retain your staff, people are now voting with their feet, as Simon has suggested. And if they don't feel invested in, developed, and looked after through training or coaching or other aspects, they're probably going to look over their shoulder and see what's out there. So at the franchise company, we're all about supporting, developing and growing and successful, sustainable franchises. So people are the essential element of that. We can look at processes, we can look at legals, we can look at building your business on solid foundations. But the end game is the business is delivered by people. So recruit them well, train them well, coach them well, and see where growth comes from. So just to finish before we go into any Q&A, we've got a few case studies to consider. I've previously worked with Revive, who are a very high-profile franchise, who are very successful and massively growth hungry and doing exceptionally well in that sort of growth development. And I've done a couple of bits of work with their high growth business program, which is specifically designed and aimed at their top performing franchises. So their top performing franchisees don't stop learning. In fact, they absorb more learning, and Revive have got an ongoing continual program to which we contribute, regular sessions around sales or business development. Sometimes you look at the sort of aspirations around growth planning, and it means that high performing franchisees continue to be indeed high performing. They also look at their next level down, which is the aspirational franchisees who are maybe newer, younger in terms of their sort of younger evolution as a Revive franchise, and put development into there through coaching and indeed through training programs. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Revive are as successful as they are through what they do with investing in their franchisees, but also their central staff within their head office function down in the West Midlands. So, and again, we've done work with a number of those teams, particular areas of the team for marketing and sales and telesales, etc., etc. So connecting success with investment in the team is an obvious win for us, but also for ongoing successfully managed franchises. We did some work, we've done quite a bit of work with Poppies as a client of the franchise company, but again, pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, we did a piece of work where we got the franchisees into a room in Manchester, and we looked at a whole area around strategy, financial planning, sales, market penetration locally, that kind of thing. And we had an ongoing kind of communication with them through a post strategy session coaching program. So those who were up for further development and put the hand up and said, I'd like to continue with this, Chris from the Poppies invested in an ongoing coaching program that just helped them to unblock whichever blockage that they had, or at least to achieve their level of aspiration when they were looking at their growth plans for the following year. We currently engage with Junior Einstein Science Club, who are massively successful in Ireland and expanding and have some rapidly expanding plans over in England and the rest of the UK. And what we're doing there is we're doing a monthly group training session via Zoom on some key subjects. And we've done things like leadership and management. We've done things like organizational planning. Next one is on Monday. We're talking about the impact of their social media strategy and how to make sure you're making the maximum impact in your local area, all around business development and creating marketing noise. And we follow that up with, in this instance, a group coaching session, which is an interesting dynamic. But we've also done some one-to-one coaching with two fairly new franchisees. And what they're finding is that just that investment in an external perspective is having a significant difference. And I'll give you an example. As a franchisor, you can say something time and time and time again to your franchisees, and they'll go, oh yeah, I get that. Externally, someone comes in, says exactly the same thing, and it's like someone's put a light bulb on and said, oh, that's interesting. It's exactly the same thing delivered in a different way, and it might be the difference between getting someone to change their habits or their process or how they operate. And the last one I just want to share with you is Jackson Fire and Security Solutions. And again, that was originally done through, we met at a networking event, put together a coaching program, and that was for a number of their franchisees who were looking to take the next step to growth, but were perhaps a little bit unsure about how to do that. So following on from Simon saying, recruit well, and that's absolutely vital. I would also then say, develop well, but develop well through having a process, through investing in that development. It's not just about throwing money and activity at training and coaching. It's about identifying what you're trying to achieve, what training would help you to achieve that as a franchisor. Should it be a one hit at a conference where we inspire a room? Should it be a group online Zoom-led session to share some skills and some practicalities? Would it be better in a face-to-face environment? Is it short and sharp? Is it ongoing? Is it part of a program? And then when you look at it and say, so how do we get our performance to the next level? That might well be that you look at individual coaching or small group coaching for key staff within the franchise, whether it's at a head office central function or whether it's at a franchisee level function. So lots to get your teeth into and lots of things to think about. But what I'd like you to ask now is, if we have any questions from the room, then we'll deal with those accordingly. So back to gallery view. There's lots of things in the chat, but because of my, are you going to deal with the chat ones, Julie?
We've got quite a lot in the chat. I was just actually going to ask Simon, coming back to really bringing the points together. Simon, you talked about, getting the boots on the ground, and historically that's what we did. We went out and visited franchisees and we got our boots into their offices or whatever to support. Nick's just been talking about support, coaching, training, a lot of which is delivered remotely using the technology. So looking at the job descriptions you're working on now, what percentage of the support a franchise was looking to provide physically, and what percentage are they happy to provide remotely using technology in this new world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say the most successful brands, the brands that are achieving significant growth, network growth, and also are recruiting, maintaining, are looking at a 70-30 split, 70 in favour of being in the field and 30 home-based remote support. That's just from my experience. They prioritise boots on the ground, people getting out and seeing people. They've prioritised that. The other 30% of the time is them sort of just doing some housekeeping stuff or remote answering Q&As. But the most successful franchisors that I can see that we recruit for put a priority on field visits.
Great. And I know Nigel Topless, our friend in franchising, is very much in favour of that as well. So that's supported by your experience. Thanks.
Yeah. And I again, I'm lucky. I've been a franchisee myself for 8 years, and to have somebody come into your business and spend some time with you is incredible. It's fantastic and it's amazing and it's brilliant. And this is the reason I got into franchising, because I wanted that support and that help.
Right, thank you. There's a question from Ben. So Ben Dunn from HomeShare, who's, well, interesting, again, one of the clients that we've worked with, and then Simon did the recruitment and brought John into the business, and now Ben's into the business as well. So that's a great example of how we all work together. And Ben said, what are your top 3 tips for supporting your new franchisees to hit the ground running?
Is that aimed at me?
No, I think it's just a general.
I'll give you my top 3. Is that all right?
Yeah,
Please.
All right, number one is presence. Be there when they start. And again, I revert you back to my driver hire story. My first day, 2 guys turned up, opened the door, came into the office and started making telephone calls, telemarketing calls for me and booking appointments. So I'd say presence, I'd say lead by example, you know, field-based, go in there and demonstrate the disciplines needed to be successful and do it and show them that you're doing it. And the third is how do you get, I guess it's know-how, make sure they know what great looks like from the very start. And that's about introducing them to other members of the network as well, or they can learn from.
Mine's easy, Ben. It's one word repeated 3 times: communication, communication, communication. I sound like Tony Blair's education speech in 1995, don't I? It is communication, communication, communication. The key to it, particularly if people are working remotely, and that's even more importantly. And I guess tapping into that, they need to know that there's a plan for them, because you know you might have a plan that you might get round to, but they need to know where do they sit in that plan. So like the snakes and ladders analogy, you know, where am I going? How long will it take to get there? And what are the pitfalls? And where do I need to be? If I'm going to get to the next level, what's the investment going to be in me and my skills and my confidence? So I think that's sharing that from the outset, you know, what an expected growth plan is. 90% of people that you employ should want to develop and grow. And then you might have 10% who are steady away and do the job, and that's absolutely fine. If you've got growth ambitions for your franchise, you need to be employing ambitious people. Ambitious people have expectations, Ben. That's the key. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just avoid the void. So if training course stops and you start into business, you know, it's bloody scary. I can tell you, I've been there. You know, and make that transition as smooth as possible and as helpful as possible, because, you know, you come off a training course fully fired up and ready to go, and you've got to have somebody there, in my view, that's going to have give you that presence and to guide you.
Training doesn't change habits. Training doesn't change behaviors. Training doesn't change culture. What it does, if you're not careful, is they'll go, oh, he's been on a course, leave him a week, he'll be back to his normal self after that. So it's got to be embedded with the franchisor after the training, so that you're changing those capabilities and making sure that people are embedding the new, you know, opportunities and ways of working. Yeah. Otherwise it becomes it's sort of like a peak, and then it's just back to normal. So you're wasting your time.
And the same to be said for a new employee as well. You know, the induction, you know, make it a really beneficial, fun, excellent, positive experience. And, you know, and it start as you mean to continue. Somebody new coming into an organization, rabbits in the headlight. So get somebody to put their arm around the shoulder and guide them into the organization. I think that's really important.
Can I add, Ben, just a sort of minor operational point? Keep them busy, because as Simon said, you know, I've never met a franchisee who on the first day literally isn't absolutely passing away with nerves, basically. So, you know, make them feel good, make it a pleasant, hopefully, experience, but actually give them process, give them structure, give them detail, day 1, day 2, day 3. These are the things that you should be doing. Program them and keep them busy. And in the old world, literally, you know, top of every sheet of mine was 10,000 leaflets. Whatever you were doing, you had 10,000 leaflets. And if you had nothing else to do, you had leaflets to go out, because if nothing else, it kept you busy, it kept you fit, but it gave you something to do. So whether it's literally having, you know, marketing, the more marketing, the better, email, social media, whatever, but always have something to fall back on to keep them busy. Because if they're not busy, the mind starts going into overdrive, and that's when sometimes negativity sets in. So,
Julie, Simon and Nick, thank you. That is really helpful. They're brilliant tips. I'll take those away. Thanks so much.
Good, you're welcome.
No worries. Can I answer this question that's here, Julie? Because I've got to get off to another call. I've got one here saying, it said, I think it's from Ed. It says, what do you think about having a training pot or a fund available to staff to develop any skills they want, even if they're perhaps not relevant to their current role? Well, I'm all for setting aside funding, Ed, for people to draw on, or more importantly for the franchisor themselves to allocate. I'm not a big fan of free for all. What do you want to develop? Let's do it. Because if those skills are not relevant to the business now and may not be going forward, teaching someone to learn Italian because they've got a requirement to an interest in it is not really going to help you or them, is it? So I think what you've got to do is, looking at what I said to Ben, is you have this roadmap of development requirements, and as a franchisor, you map that out like you would do any marketing spend and say, what's it going to cost me and what am I prepared to invest in that? And then you say to your staff, these are the things that we're going to invest in. The delivery might be up for negotiation. Would they prefer to go on a local course in a classroom, or do some remote learning or some e-learning or whatever? Because people learn in different ways. But subject matter wise, for me, it's got to be relevant to the business, and it's not a free-for-all, choose what you want kind of thing.
I was just thinking it's a potential additional benefit for them to develop themselves. And if you want to retain staff, it could be a good idea. It's something I tried to implement in the past, which is why I thought I'd throw the question out to see what people's thoughts were.
It's a good question. And I think if you're talking in a franchising perspective, a lot of my clients, for example, are putting their people through QFP, encouraging them to, professional development, professional qualification, QFP. Other things I'm seeing, share option schemes to engage and keep good talent,
Going back to the QFP, Simon, the QFP is great because it's a recognised qualification within the sector. It's very specific to that sector. And I think even if you did a QFP qualification, it's not relevant across every part of everyone's role, but it is still an interesting developmental opportunity. So QFP would be a way to go, and that would then, see what they want to do with that. My experience of people working down a route like a QFP is it usually opens up ideas for themselves to go, what's next, or what I want to concentrate more on? Because a QFP is a sort of generalist, sort of across the top, lots and lots of subject areas. Whereas they might then want to drill down and say, I want to be more specialist in this area, which is where the investment comes in on a one-to-one basis, I would say. I'm just conscious of time. Natalia, you got your hand up, and you've had your hand up for some time. I didn't want to ignore you. Natalia, you got a question?
No, I just wanted to add very quickly, just to say, in terms of the training, I think just any sort of, leadership, leadership and coaching training is great for anyone, regardless of the role. And just sort of business coaching, again, because from that people benefit both personally and professionally, because I don't think you can have leadership training or coaching and not take something out of that, personally. And just the only other thing I would say is whatever training you offer to franchisees should be offered to your staff, because if they have been through that training, they will be on the same page and will be able to then discuss that and further support the franchisees, because that's the whole point, right? So and the only other thing I want to say was just to really support the point that Simon made at the very beginning, is that I think having the right people in the right roles within the franchisor organization is essential, because one of the things that it also can do is protect you from risk as well, protect you from legal claims, because if you've got the right people, they will have the right experience and they will be able to have the right conversations and diffuse even very difficult situations that actually is really beneficial for you as the franchisor. So yeah, not to be underestimated.
All great points. Listen, I'm going to finish off formally. I'm going to let the meeting run, but I'm going to stop the recording and leave it. I'm just going to say we've got another one of the first Friday sessions on the 2nd of December. Thank you. We've got James Nesfield from Atlas Mapping, and we're going to talk about how to evaluate and plan your territories. It's really interesting in terms of looking at the demographics of that, getting that right from day one or amending it after day two is an option to make sure you're maximizing the territory performance of your franchise. So again, lots to hopefully get excited about and to enjoy. I'm just going to say thank you for those who've been around and been on today. Some of your questions have been really interesting. Thanks again, Simon, for your insight into the current status of recruitment and things for us to get it right. So that's really appreciated. And it just remains me to say thank you for supporting me Franchise Company First Friday group session again. Have a great month.